All right, welcome to Comic Shop News, the LongBox Paradox, episode 77. I actually checked before I went on today to make sure I actually had the episode right. So today we're going to be doing our top 10 Image comics.
Where we each bring 10
this
time.
Yes, we talked about it this time. Because I kind of sold this as it's going to be a tough one for us, and it would be our own Sophie's choice deciding which one of our children we're going to have to kill.
Yeah.
So I want to start out with some odd news going around. Bleeding Cool's run a series of articles about the new services that are now distributing comics. Lunar has been getting stellar about their packaging. UCS, apparently they're shipping to Canada. The rates are astronomical. One of the shops said that they're going to clear $3 in profit.
Wow. And what was their, like $3 out of what?
They didn't say what they ordered. They were going to have $3 profit if they sold everything.
I mean,
after shipping and everything.
That still sucks no matter how much it is. But if it was like 3 books, I'd be like, okay. But if it was like a lot of books, man, that's a lot of work. And a lot of the work that the comic shops are doing right now amid closures is a lot harder work than people going and getting their comics, coming up to a desk, and then, leaving.
Yeah.
Like, comic book stores are working a lot harder now.
Also, not surprised by hearing about Lunar with their packaging, because I've bought from DCBS before, and their packaging is phenomenal, even if it's just one comic. Like, they're always very meticulous. So hearing shops going through Lunar, their distribution, and saying, why can't Diamond do this? I'm not surprised. That was not news.
I remember seeing one of the shops just had a brutal kind of takedown, of Diamond, saying, these comics that I'm now getting not from Diamond, I could get this box and throw it against the wall and it wouldn't be as damaged as a box that Diamond ships me.
Well, they said even the trades were wrapped together and boxed, whereas, Diamond, after, I worked at a comic store for a long time, and just the way they'd ship stuff and how UPS would handle those boxes. And then we go to the other end of Warren Ellis's newsletter.
Which, that was heartbreaking. I think I read it that Monday morning instead of Sunday. And Warren Ellis, especially we've talked about so much of his work recently, and just to see him read his words saying, I don't feel like I have an impact in the comic book industry. I'm like, what world are you living in?
Middling career is what he put it.
Middling career. And I'm like, I don't think so at all.
Also, it kind of gave you more of a heads up of what's been going on with Diamond. They stopped paying the publishers during all this. So basically, Warren Ellis lost his own imprint because they stopped paying people. He was going to have an imprint with a publisher. He wasn't saying who. His own Millar World and whatever you want to call it. He was going to have his own imprint. And because of it, this whole deal fell apart.
I could easily see Warren Ellis doing what Mark Millar did with Millar World and partnering with Netflix. I could easily see him going that route, either with Netflix or another streaming service or video on demand. Amazon. I could easily see going back and looking at so much of his work. I could clearly see so much of this being modified for TV or movies so easily.
Injection or Trees could easily become a weird kind of Lost.
Yep.
It was disappointing, and getting a more heads up of, he started going in about how this monopoly basically fucking ruined him.
Mm-hmm.
So he was going to have 2 years worth of stuff lined up. Now it's all gone.
I think that a lot has been, the brakes have been put on a lot of things. So maybe, when the dust kind of begins to clear with the global pandemic, maybe we'll see it.
He seems to be a person who would kind of hold a grudge.
Yeah, and not go back. Yeah.
Yeah, he's all right, I'm not going to look back. I'm just going to keep moving forward. The middling career is where I kind of stopped. I was like, dude, what? I mean, he, as a writer, he's had more of an impact on me than in a short amount of time than a lot of other people have.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Maybe I'm overselling that a little bit, but he's one of the writers. He put something out it goes on my pull list.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see more from him, and hopefully I don't think that he'll give up, but it was really sad to read.
He might do more screenwriting.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of put that out there. Yeah. Which maybe it will be Netflix stuff that he's going to do.
Maybe.
So was there any subjects you wanted to bring up before we started?
Those were the only two. The only other kind of comic book related thing that's been on my radar is this kind of fallout, this, in my like nerd world, celebrity couple breakup between Amanda Palmer and Neil Gaiman, and
her just putting it out on Patreon and not alerting him that she was going to make a public post about it.
Well, from what I understand, he made a public post first, and then so there's been a lot going on, and I truly don't know what's going on. Like, my heart goes out to both of them. My heart goes out to their kid. I know that, you know, if you take a look at their breadth of work in the past, like, is Neil Gaiman, like, is he clear of anything? You know, is he a perfect child? Like, no, of course not. Like, I 100% love his work, but can critique it. And same with Amanda Palmer. Like, she has some blemishes on her career that I don't think that she's accounted for all of them, but I wouldn't necessarily say the hate and the vitriol against her I don't get. But
yeah, it was like on Consequence of Sound, they did kind of the timeline, and it was like she made the post on Patreon, and then the next day he's like, okay, well, I guess that's out there now. So much for that. Yes, I am living in the UK. Yeah.
And gosh, like, I've been speculating about it, and like a kid, if you don't tell me what's going on, I'm just going to make up like wild like things. I'm just going to be like, well, what did he do? They have an open relationship. So, you know, was there cheating or dishonesty, and what does that look like? And so I don't know.
It could be just you get to that point where you just realize just not where you want to be in life.
Yeah, 100%. But so that's the only other thing that's been on my radar.
I also wanted to extend a thank you to Instagram user and viewer Sanimation05. She left a very, very sweet Instagram post about Jennifer and I and the show that we're doing. And it honestly made me feel really fucking good about what we're doing. Very heartfelt. And also saying how, like, we talk about comics and it's not showing off our stuff. It's basically our love of the medium. And it was just something nice in the morning to hear on kind of a rough day. So I really, really appreciated that. And Sanimation, if you're watching, sorry about your wallet, but I am good to hear that you bought Die and
Planetary.
She bought Planetary, and she also bought Saga Volume 2.
Oh, nice. Beautiful.
So before we get into our top 10, what was your intro to Image? What was your first book? Like, what brought you into, like, becoming the fan of Image?
So I think that, like, when I think back to, like, when I really realized that happened and when Image was put on my radar, I think that, like, I moved from a place in North Florida where I moved to South Carolina, and I moved for a job, and I thought I was doing the right thing in my career, and it was really just like a messy, like, pipe dream of mine, and it was just not a fun time, but it brought me to South Carolina, and I found the Tangled Web, which is in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which will, like, I knew that I loved comics, but Tangled Web in South Carolina made me love comic book stores. And when I think about, like, my love of comic book stores, I think that that's when I also found Image. I would say that not necessarily one title, but several different titles really did this. And I'm going to mention them soon. I don't think that it's any wild guess what my number one, what that title would be. But when I think about my love of Image, I also think of just my love for my local comic book store. And that's moved with me from every single place that I've lived, just trying to support the comic book store closest to me, or even if it's farther away, going to the ones that are farther away. But yeah. What about you?
I, of course, was, I'm an older fan, and I was there from day one.
Mm-hmm.
I remember torturing my LCS, several LCSs, in case one of them was lying to me about Youngblood coming out, which was the first Image book I ever bought. Of course, you know, it was the founders, the 7 of them. Will Spartacio with Wetworks never came out until like years later. But Youngblood was the first one out the door. And I remember being so excited to get this, what was going to be a collector's item, just worth thousands of dollars, and then going home and opening it, and it was the worst written story. And this is a time where like writing, it wasn't really, I wasn't as into the writing as I was the art at the time. And I was like, okay, maybe this is just a hiccup, you know, just first issue, you know, threw it out there. And then the next issue came out, and I was like, So the downer of it began. McFarlane's Spawn came out. And better. Much better. Darker than I thought it was going to be. But that was the book going, okay, there's hope for this. Savage Dragon came out. It was interesting.
And it's still interesting to this day. Like, if you've picked up any recent Savage Dragon, I was so hype on Image books. Like, my one of them. Can't believe that. I for sure.
Oh, Modern Lit, you're hitting every fucking trigger for me right now. Spawn kept me going. Spawn actually was the most solid of the books. Savage Dragon evolved into this weird other book as it went later on. But I give Eric Larson credit. He's the only fucking one that stayed with his book the entire time. Mm-hmm. Him and McFarlane, even McFarlane pulled back from it. He was still involved with the day-to-day of that book, even when he brought in Greg Capullo to ghost him before actually telling everybody it was Greg Capullo.
Yeah.
I bought everything Image, like all of it. Like Wildcats was a steaming bag of shit when that came out, but it was Jim Lee art. Yeah. So I of course, I bought everything. Like Stormwatch was terrible. I still bought it until Warren Ellis took over. And I was like, hey, this is actually good. But I think kind of like I do with some comics, I eventually got to a point where I broke up with Image, where it became trash. You know, every now and again.
Not that you want to like mention the trash title, but like, what would you say like were the titles that you were like, okay, this is where it's gonna ebb and not flow? Any ones that you want to mention? I hate like trashing.
There is in particular, like Modern Lit said, like Troll was and I'm saying this knowing that my friend did one of the issues of Troll. He was the artist on there. He worked for Extreme. So I'm sorry, Carl. You're my boy, but he did do Bloodstrike, and it got me back on Bloodstrike. Oh God, there was one of those Extreme Studio crossovers where I eventually just sat there going, nah, just no, I'm not doing this. This is ridiculous. I think it was Babe Watch, where they had them all gender swap. It was such a. It's when I started going, okay, but then like DC's normal books at the time were also hot steaming bags of trash. Marvel was about to go bankrupt. So everything in that time was real bad.
Sorry, Call.
He's a toy designer now. He's a toy designer now. So,
I think that like I feel like this term gets thrown out a lot, especially when like, you know, we're living in the golden age of television. Like right now, I feel like we're living in the golden age of Image. Like there are very few titles that I'm just like, these titles are trash. And I don't think that we're going to have that perspective 20 years from now and be like, everything that Image was putting out was trash. But I feel like that's kind of what we are, not necessarily what we're doing right now, saying looking back, but I think that like we'll look back and be like, this was like a new era of Image Comics, like
The,
publishing stuff.
the big turning point for me was when Jim Valentino took over as the head of Image for a bit, or I forget what the position's called. Eric Stevenson's in it now. When those two took over, it started making a turn from we're the art studio to we're going to bring in creatives, writers, and kind of change the mood of what we have. Because I mean, Image was always, you had your Michael Turners, your J. Scott Campbells. Madeira went over there to do Battle Chasers. They all the guys from Cliffhanger came in to do these great books, and they never finished any of them. None of them.
And I think, I'm so thankful for all of these people coming to Image. But I think that maybe even, what's that like phrase? Like whenever you're like throwing spaghetti against the wall and you see what sticks.
Yeah.
And I think that was a lot of it. They're like, we're being turned down by the big guys. Let's just go ahead and do our own thing. But I think that the quality was kind of there, even though the art style was very popular. We look at it now and we're just like, really?
Like McFarlane, like he gave, a very little known Brian Bendis Sam and Twitch a Spawn title to do for a bit. Bendis got to work his chops on that. So during that time, there were some people who came in there and got to get early work and kind of find their groove. So, Image was a good place for that, but I think the quality of books that were coming out during that time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you started getting these writers coming in and actually being able to work their craft and build these epic stories. And I think, in my opinion, Image became the new Vertigo.
For sure. And like Vertigo, like rest in peace. But when I think about when I first started getting into comic books, it was all Vertigo. It was Sandman, just like all the Alan Moore titles and like all of that. It was Vertigo for me. And now it's mostly going to be Image.
Well, that was the kind of the funny thing, because when Image was first starting, that's when Vertigo, to me, was really hitting its peak, because you had Preacher, Sandman was still going strong.
Yeah.
A lot of great titles, but they were, for readers, whereas Image was all for your eye candy books. Like,
yep.
You're not looking for highbrow entertainment. Even Grant Morrison kind of in Doom Patrol picked fun at them, with Doom Force, and everything was like trademark this, trademark that. Morrison had his fun with them.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've been there from the beginning, and again, it's a love-hate thing. I go through it with every book at some point. Yeah. It was a whole comic line at one point where I was just like, nope, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
So let's go to.
We're gonna start with honorable mentions
for
our top 10.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we limiting it, or are we?
Are we what?
Are we limiting it, or are we going the whole hog of honorable mentions?
I've got 3 here.
Okay, I can do 3.
3? Okay. So my first one for honorable mentions is going to be Nameless.
We're just starting, Jay, for our list, so you're not missing anything.
Yeah, this is just our honorable mentions, and we're going from 10 to 1. So these were the babies that I cut. So you mentioned earlier, like, what are the babies that we're killing to sacrifice the top 10 titles? Nameless by Grant Morrison is going to be on kind of the chopping block, but an honorable mention nonetheless. And even though this was such a fantastic story, and man, like, I've talked about it in the past couple streams, I really love it, but because there's only one, I didn't want to give it like a title of being like, this is one of my favorite series, because it is only 1 volume, which I like about it, but the other titles that I listed on my top 10 all are like more ongoing series. And then, do you want me to go with my other 2, or do you want to go?
Yeah, we'll do your other 2, and then we'll switch back and forth for our top 10.
So my other one, once again, for the same kind of reason, is Coffin Bound. I really enjoyed Coffin Bound so much. It's wacky, it's wild, it's weird, and I love the artwork so much.
I had a
How
complicated relationship with that book.
it was weird.
I thought she was kind of a generic Cassie Hack.
You know, I did totally get those vibes too, like goth girl kind of going and slashing stuff, but you know, in a
I was
different
more
way
interested in the Earth Eater or whatever it was called.
This, I feel like I was left with a lot of questions after reading this. It's really weird, but it's my brand of weird, kind of sci-fi, kind of horror, kind of this just like weird genre. I think if this one had like volume 2 and 3, and we had been deeper into this series, then it probably would have been on my top 10. So if we do another top 10, like a couple years from now, this one might be on it. But I really, really, really enjoyed Coffin Bound a lot. Okay, my last honorable mention, and I gushed about this book, Little Bird. I am telling you, this one gave me saga vibes. Like, it made my heart beat in a way that, like, not many comics have been able to do. And I love this story. I love the artwork. It's so beautiful and it's so wonderful. But it's on the chopping block because there's only one.
So Modern Lit just brought up, it's two different things here. The dialogue was oddly Shakespearean and coffin bound.
It was in my opinion, poetic, which I really enjoyed. And I think that that's why there's a little bit of confusion, because you can interpret it so many different ways.
We talked about this before. Little Bird reminded me of Pretty Deadly. A lot, maybe just because the main character, the design, reminded me of the little girl in the first one, Pretty Deadly. It just, for some reason, it gave me that vibe more than anything else, and not so much saga.
Yeah, I think that when I think about this book, saga. So what's the elevator pitch on Coffin Bound? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to Coffin Bound. And this is really hard because there's a lot of stuff without giving it away. It immediately goes to, there's a girl on the run and people are trying to murder her. And there is a strip club where you literally peel your skin off. I don't know if that even begins to touch on the weirdness of this book. You'd
probably need the mountain of coke that the Game of Thrones writers had for that last season.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just going to, it's about to get kind of graphic, but some of the artwork there, it's really fun. And she's just like riding around in the desert in a convertible. Like, to me, I don't know. And I think the thing I also liked about this is because it is a character that you don't like. The character, she's not necessarily a good character. You find out kind of why people are after her, and she's done shitty things to the people that she's loved and love her. I just love it. Sold. Like, please tell them I sent you. Image, sponsor me, please.
I did tag them.
Please, I live 10 minutes away from your headquarters. Kind of weird. Not stalkerish at all. I'm sorry. Okay, so those are my those are my 3 like honorable mentions that didn't make it on my top 10 list. So go ahead and go with yours.
Okay. 2 of these broke me having to not include. Invincible by Robert Kirkman and Ryan Ottley. It's a fun superhero book that's very emotional. I would say it's actually one of the better written Kirkman books that kind of gets lost in the shuffle because of Walking Dead. I really enjoy it. It has like peaks, valleys. It has like heartbreaking moments. If you kind of don't know what it's about, this kid finds out him and his dad are basically alien hybrids that his dad's been hiding as a superhero, but he's there to infiltrate and take over the world. And kid finds out, fights his dad. Then there's an invasion, and he's dealing with learning his powers. He joins a super team and falls in love with a girl, Adam Eve. So you go through like meeting all of these new superheroes and his interactions with them. Plus, the alien race does eventually come to invade. it's a lot to actually unfold. There's no elevator pitch that makes sense for it. Just it's whimsical at times, but entertaining, tragic at other times. It does the full gamut.
For me, like Invincible, I have never gotten into it past like part of the first volume. And I think that's because like there's what 20 something, 30 something volumes that we have of Invincible. So I think that it is just like a lot to tackle. But I would almost say, and I don't describe this in like a negative connotation, but like Black Hammer light. Like I suggest Black Hammer for people who have that superhero fatigue. If you still like superheroes, but you want a different story, like I would go with Invincible.
It's not as dark as Black Hammer.
For sure. Like that's why I'm saying like Black Hammer, like Diet or light Black Hammer.
This next one really hurt me. Descender.
Ooh, I'm kind of like booing that that's not on. I mean, I get it because, okay, so why is it an honorable mention?
The other stuff on here, oh boy, it just it resonated with me more. Like I love Descender, but at the same time, if I think of like a book that moves me or did something to me, it's not the first one I mention. It kind of, I wish I could describe it more, but it's just something that doesn't hit me as hard when I talk about it. But I love the book. Again, I had to kill a child here.
Remind me, was that on one of your top lists last week when we were doing sci-fi?
It was an honorable mention.
Okay.
Well, had I had my top 10 and not a 5,
got it.
It was there. And boy. So this is one of those, I think in my mind it's more what's the word I'm looking for? I have more nostalgia towards it than actually like loving it, and that would be Spawn.
You know, I would almost say that Spawn would almost be an honorable mention for me. If for nothing else, then it gave us Angela, who is one of my favorite characters.
And had one of the longest running lawsuits between Neil Gaiman and Todd McFarlane.
Yep.
I want to say 15 years.
Something like that. Yeah, it got settled in what, like 2012, 2013?
Yeah, either of them got the character, got sold to Marvel.
Yeah, it got so. Well, I thought that Neil Gaiman got it and then gave it to Marvel.
Something happened with it.
But now she's Marvel, so yeah. Hopefully, my biggest dream is that we'll see her in the cinematic universe. But I think that as much as I loved Thor Ragnarok, I think that kind of messed that up because Angela is technically now like in Thor's family and
a
half sister. So that's taken up now, but we'll see. We'll see if she comes into play.
And now on to top 10s.
Okay.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. So my top 10, and this was almost an honorable mention, but because I didn't put these on here because they're not ongoing. This one, because it is ongoing, and I believe the last one is just about to come out, but Sex Criminals. I think this is in that weird, wacky, it's not sci-fi, but what's that?
I'd probably put it as humor.
Yeah, it's human or humor. It's definitely mature from what you can tell from the title. The basic elevator pitch of Sex Criminals, if you have not read it or you don't know what it is, it's done by Matt Fraction, Chip Zdarsky, and it's basically these two people meet. They find out that they both know this from their like growing up, but they can both stop time as they orgasm. So, a local like library or bookstore or something is about to be closed, so they end up going and like robbing a bank.
Sue works at the character Sue.
Oh yeah, so she works at, and then she works at the library, and it's about to close, and so they stop time and they decide that they're going to go like rob a bank because of it. I think I heard or read that Neil Gaiman gave the money he was awarded to charity. Okay, for Angela. Beautiful. So yeah, Sex Criminals, I would definitely say this is in my top 10. It's about to end. Highly recommend it. It's definitely for mature readers, but it's beautiful, it's fun, and it's very humorous.
All right, my number 10. Actually, it's going to shock you
Ooh, is it?
a little bit that it's where it is on the list. So,
am I going to be heartbroken?
Nah.
Okay.
It's Nailbiter.
You know, I knew that Nailbiter was going to be on your list, but I didn't know where. And you're right. I am very surprised that it's number 10. But
Josh Williamson, Mike Henderson, Adam Gazowski, fantastic job on this book. It's one of those books that it's cleverly written. It uses the tropes well. Why it's so low on this? I could have rearranged this list 7 times outside of the top 2 and been okay with everything. I think it's because it's not a clever book. You read it, you're entertained, you put it down, it doesn't stick with you.
Like you're not thinking about it afterwards.
Yeah, it's not a big thinker book. I love it. We have both read the review copy of the new one. And I'm just putting it out here now. It's great. It's just as good as the old series. And to see the interviews with Mike Henderson saying he never thought how happy he'd be to be back in Buckaroo again. It just tells you how much they all enjoy working on the book. And I thoroughly enjoyed it and getting back to the characters that I grew to love. Again, I kind of put it here at 10, even like looking at it, I'm like, I mean, I could have gone higher, but I don't know. But I'm staying with my pick right here at 10. You're number 9.
Okay. So my number 9 and Descender. So it did definitely make my top 10 list. I really enjoy this book. I'm a really big fan. Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. His artwork in it is just fantastic. It's beautiful. I really, really enjoy because it definitely is sci-fi, kind of hard sci-fi. There's a lot of science to it. But I'm trying to pick a page that's not too spoilery.
I love Telsa.
Every time I read her, I always think Tesla, but it's not. But I love the artwork. It's this beautiful watercolor style that Dustin Nguyen's just known for.
His little Gotham stuff is fantastic. He also did some Streets of Gotham with Paul Dini back in the day.
Yep. So if you like sci-fi, and I wouldn't necessarily call it like whimsical because of the artwork, even though it gives off
dark.
Those vibes.
The story is dark.
It's very dark. It does get a little bit bloody, a little bit gory. It's very sad. But this one for sure is one of my favorite titles. So Descender, check it out. If you like sci-fi and
Hard
robots,
sci-fi.
hard sci-fi, like hard with 2 Ds. Is that a thing?
It is now.
It is now. Hard with 2 Ds, trademarked.
My number 9 is Wicked and Divine by Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey. These guys have worked together a lot in the past. Their Young Avengers run was very good. Wicked and Divine, it was so fresh when I first read it. You have all of these people who become gods, basically, and they only live so long before they die, but they become famous like rock stars. And one of the main characters we meet is a girl who goes to one of the concerts, and she ends up meeting Lucy, who basically is David Bowie. It's how I imagine Tilda Swinton playing David Bowie.
Tilda Swinton is David, like in my brain, like Tilda Swinton is David Bowie and David Bowie is Tilda Swinton. Like the two are just, yeah.
So with a snap, blow someone's head up. Like, and as you get further on, some people become gods, some die. The characters are all written interesting.
Double D hard. Yep. Hard with 2 Ds.
The characters are interesting. The design is great. They have one-shots where they go back in time. Mary Shelley was one of the fucking deities at one point. And this is a book that's a thinker.
Yeah.
It's also a murder mystery at points in time, and there's plot twists galore, and all of these deities that they become, they're all flawed in their own ways. And Kieran Gillen has slowly worked his way up into being one of my go-to writers, where he puts something out, I'm like, all right, I got to check that out. I'm just Die. That's one. Like,
yep.
Once in Future.
It's funny, like, now that you say Wicked and Divine, like, it's not on my top 10, and I'm really surprised it didn't end up there. And when I think about Wicked and Divine, I think about American Gods, and I think that Wicked and Divine is what American Gods, which is my favorite novel by Neil Gaiman, like, if that book was a comic book and written like 20 years later, that would be Wicked and Divine. So if you like Wicked and Divine and you want to read a book and you haven't maybe seen the series, I highly recommend, hey Connie, I highly recommend American Gods too, if you haven't read it.
The series actually hasn't been bad either, the TV series.
You know, I think because American Gods is like one of my like precious like favorites, it was really hard to watch the show. There were moments that I liked, and I didn't finish up with the second season. So
I got like that with Lock and Key, the Netflix show. I was so excited to watch it, and then I like Lock and Key so much that like watching the show, I was like, I can't do it.
Well, I think what's so funny is that people who really hardcore love the comic book series, you don't like the show, but people who are either haven't read the comic book series or were kind of like on the road about it, like I enjoyed the Netflix show. But
yeah, I mean, it happens. I haven't watched since past episode 4 because I was just like, okay, it's just too many paths going now. Like okay, you're number 8. Okay,
so my number 8 is gonna be Paper Girls. Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chang. This one, once again, it goes into that like weird wacky. And I remember reading this one right before Stranger Things came out. And I
think they came out in the same week.
They came out like in the same kind of time frame. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why? This is totally going to be a ripoff of Paper Girls. It totally isn't. Paper Girls is... It's weird, precious, beautiful own thing. Definitely going to be like, I don't necessarily want to recommend this for teenagers getting into it, even though it features a lot of teenagers. I don't want to give any spoiler alerts away on things that happen, but it's some weird, wacky sci-fi, and it definitely deals with like growing up. That's all. If you haven't read Paper Girls, that's kind of all I'm going to give. But yeah.
That last volume kept it off my list.
Really?
That ending irritated me to no end because it fell flat. It flatlined for me, and I don't know what I was expecting.
Whenever a series like this, you guys are already killing. I know. So okay,
we knew this was gonna happen. Like
this happens my thing is like whenever I think about the ending of a series is either, and I always go back to the one like. I'm going to paraphrase this like Batman quote, is you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I think that's so true of like all these series, is that like you either die and you die great and everyone's upset that the series ended too quickly, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, you know?
I just felt it fell flat the last couple of issues. Like, I don't know what I was expecting. I just remember reading, going, "Wow, that's it."
Yeah.
Wow. I put down. I haven't reread it since.
Maybe give it a reread. What's your next one?
Supreme the Blue Rose.
Sorry for that like big motion, because like I know that. Sorry. Go.
So Warren Ellis with Tula Lotay, which if you're not up on Tula Lotay, her art is beautiful. I first got introduced to her. She did a American Vampire anthology, and her art was with Gail Simone. And it was one of the darkest stories I ever read. And it's honestly one of the better Gail Simone short stories I've read for like a one-shot story. Tula is bae. Oh, Tula is awesome. Like she is fantastic. You pair her with Warren Ellis taking this crap extreme character. Like I hated even then. Although Alan Moore did a great run on Supreme back in the day. And it became like this weird head trip fucking thing where every issue I sat there afterward going, all right, what did I just read? Like I started thinking about it, and her art, the art style, the coloring on everything, like you'd stop on a page and then just like resonate with it. The covers, like that first cover was just beautiful.
Her art, like the artwork is just so like dreamy and liquidy, and all of her characters, like they're very like sensual the way that she draws them, but not in a way that's like disgusting or pervy. Like there's some like very erotic artists, and you know I get that, but there's some artists that draw it like that and it's just in an uncomfortable way. Hers are just so like comfortably sensual. Her artwork is.
She did a great Wonder Woman one sheet print about a year or two ago. I think it was when Wonder Woman movie came out that I missed out on getting. She also did movie posters for David Lynch stuff. So she did Mulholland Drive, a poster for that. Of course, it was a Mondo print, so it was gone like that.
Yeah.
Check out this series if you can find it. I mean, the issues aren't expensive. It's one of those books that, like, it was a big deal for me, but the rest of the world didn't really catch on to it or care. But it was a Warren Ellis book, so I was like, well, I'm picking it up. It was just a fascinating take on this character and the way they did it and the way the world was built in it. And again, Tula Te's art is one of those ones where it's distracting to a degree where you're reading and then you stop and you're just like, wow, that's just fucking beautiful.
One of those artists that like your eye just gets lost in it. It's beautiful.
Definitely. And on to your next one.
Okay, so my next one, we talked about it before, or at least we talked about volume 2 before.
I did volume 1.
Yep. This was Stephanie Hans, Kieran Gillen. If you haven't read it, I know we've talked about it a little bit before, but there's this like D&D style game that these teenagers get into. They get trapped. They're there for several years. Fast forward, they're adults with a lot of fucking problems, and they have to re-enter the world. So it's beautiful. And once again, talking about artwork that just drips sensuality and that you can just get lost in. Stephanie Hahn's artwork is just fantastic. It really brings out the like fantasy artwork or fantasy vibes that this story gives off.
I can't picture that book being drawn by anyone else at this point.
No, if I had to like dream cast anyone else to do it, I don't, because the way I'll always be thinking of the way she's drawn it. So like if someone else comes in, like the style will never match completely. For sure. So definitely, what is that, number 6 on my list?
No, you should be 10, 9, 8. That should be number 7.
Okay, so this is number 7. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, what's yours?
I have a curveball here.
Okay.
Morning Glories.
Okay.
Nick Spencer with Joe Eisma. This was one of those books that I worked in a bookstore for 20 years. So it would come in like, and I'd look at it all the time, like, that looks interesting, but I never got it. And then finally, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. We had a huge discount going, and it was the buy 2, get the 3rd free. So I just picked up all of them. And it was fucking great. If you like the weirdness of Lost, but have it take place in a private school, and also have them have like occult and creatures going on and weird time travel with people meeting their older selves that are actually working at the school. it really was a head trip, and like I started reading, I never put it down, and it stopped at issue 50. They're on what feels like a 3-year hiatus right now because Nick Spencer was busy turning Captain America into Hydra.
Oh,
But I really enjoyed this series. There's this crazy Russian assassin girl, Irina, that goes to the school who's fucking nuts. And of course, because I'm a broken person, I like instantly gravitate into like, oh, she's insane. That's mine. Really, really enjoyed it. Not for everybody, but it was weirdly a book that, and Joe Eisma, his covers for some reason are like always called to me. It was just that first trade. And they broke it down to like school seasons. So there's like a season 1, season 2, and then one that comes out next is going to be called Summer Vacation. That was my number 7.
okay. So now my number 6. Okay. Pretty Deadly. I have a lot of love for this book for so many reasons. Kelly Sue DeConnick, one of my absolute favorite writers, and Emma Rios, her artwork. Once again, it sounds like we're the theme of this like artwork. Once again, in a completely different way than I would say Stephanie Hans or Tula Lote, but I feel like I just get completely lost in it. And I think the storytelling of this is really beautiful. There's so many tragic characters. Very dark. I love it.
I think that's DeConnick's actually best book, in my opinion.
I have feelings about this, and I think that we've discussed it a little bit, so I won't discuss it again. But it for sure, it like this story specifically touches on a lot of those like Western tropes, but just completely blows them out of the water. If you liked Pretty Deadly, I think in a very, very weird way, you would also like Coffin Bound, because a little bit because of the artwork style is that like pretty, but what?
Little Bird.
Yeah, a little bit. Like I think that there's really a reason why a lot of these share a lot of the same themes and end up on my list.
I love the character design of Ginny.
Yeah. Yep. Volume 3 just came out right before this Corona apocalypse happened. And volume 3 took it in a little bit of a different like turn. It brings you into a new century, but with a lot of the same themes. So Pretty Deadly, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Emma Rios. Check it out. Beautiful.
I'm going to my number 6 is the title. Give a little bit of backstory to it before I announce it. So Matt Wagner is the George R.R. Martin of the comic world, especially for this title. So a long time ago, he put out Mage, the Hero Discovered. It took 15 years for him to put out The Hero Defined, which The Hero Defined came to Image, and he's published with Image since. Hero Defined came out, and that's the one I'm picking for this. And it turned the mythology of Mage upside down. If you haven't read Mage, basically these things called the Grackle Flints start coming around. Kevin Matchstick is the embodiment of King Arthur. And he has a baseball bat that he can put electricity in through his body, and it's basically Excalibur. And he's trying to make sure the Fisher King never gets discovered. So it has Arthurian lore. This one, like, it has Hercules in it. It has this character, Joe Fat, who's a speedster. So he meets other embodiments of, like, mythology. And, of course, it's a bigger bad. He ends up meeting with a witch that he marries and falls in love with eventually. Fairly long series. And by the end of it, he kind of corrupts the power. So it corrupted him. I don't want to go any further with spoiling in case people want to read it. Modern Lit, you are 100% correct. Grendel and Mage, they both make fantastic TV series. Grendel in particular, because you can do a season and then go jump 20 years. because Grendel is one of the weird things where he killed the character off early, the first character, Hunter Rose, and the legacy carried on where it jumped 50 years ahead, where the daughter of his ward, her son is killed by a kabuki vampire, and she takes the Grendel mask and it's like a bladed fork, and fights him. And then after that, her boyfriend goes crazy and becomes a Grendel in Central Park, basically. Then it jumps 1,000 years, and now it's become a religion. And the Kabuki vampire comes back, and he's the Pope of the world.
I feel like this, I've seen Mage, but I haven't ever picked it up, and I don't know why, because this sounds like my weird brand of horror.
Mage Hero Defined was kind of brotastic.
So that's probably why I haven't.
Hero Discovered was not. Hero Defined was because he found these other bros. And then the newest one, I forget what the hell it was called, the newest run of it. It's mainly about his family. And that was a 20-year gap before he put this one out. That's why I say he's like, with Mage, he's the George R. R. Martin of, this is his Song of Ice and Fire. Maybe even longer in between, because I recommend picking up at least the Hero Discovered. And if you don't vibe on that, then you're not gonna like the rest. Uh-uh. But I'm an unabashed Matt Wagner fan, at least for those two properties. And again, like, I waited so long for it, and I loved it, and then nothing for 20 years. So,
well, at least Matt Wagner is hopefully in good health and not too old like George. No, I don't want to say George R. R. Martin.
Don't kill him. Don't kill him.
Sorry,
please don't kill him.
Sorry, I'm gonna take my name off his list, or take his name off my list.
Didn't you hear Neil Gaiman say George R. R. Martin's not your bitch?
Yes, I 100% understand, but I really want to read it.
Well, after the ending of that show, I mean. Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, I need to read the books in order to take the taste of the show out of my mouth, and I don't want to talk about the last season of Game of Thrones at all.
On to your number 5.
Okay, number 5 is the book that we have coming up for our next graphic novel book club, Monstrous. It's once again some weird fantasy and not necessarily weird sci-fi. There's a little bit of science and magic in this book, but this one I really enjoy, not just because, once again, the beautiful artwork that you can just absolutely find yourself getting lost in. Seriously, like, the artwork, if you're not reading it for the story, at least read it for the artwork. But it is based, there's a lot of almost parallels. I don't want to call parallels to X-Men, but it deals with monsters and, I don't know, monsters becoming slaves and being the subjugated race. And so anyway, I really don't want to go into too much detail, but Monstrous is a beautiful book, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I highly recommend Monstrous.
It was one of those books, I saw it coming out, Marjorie Liu had written the X-23 series I did not really love, and I was very iffy on this book coming out. And then I saw Sana Takeda's art, and I was like, okay, the cover got me.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the floppy of it was a pain in the ass because it was so big that the cover was ripping. All of them, because it was so damn heavy.
Connie, I really appreciate that. I love all these, all the artists and all the writers. Image specifically is why I pick these books up, because they are creator owned, and all of these writers and all of these artists are ones that like I personally follow, and I will, pending any type of like disastrous news that comes out about any of them, like I will die on the hill of all of these creators because I love them so fucking much.
That's why Rat Queens isn't on my list.
That is, you know, can I like go back in time and give Rat Queens like a dishonorable mention here, because it was such a
So
good
strong
story.
and
It was incredible, and then we find out that the guy who drew it initially had domestic violence accusations. I don't know if he ever got charged, and then the whole shit with fucking Tess Fowler like getting brought on,
fired, kind of, and then Stepan
fired.
Sejic took over, and then
like she was fired, but then she was fired basically over Twitter. They told her that her job was safe, and she was doing such incredible work, and then they just booted her off. So Rat Queens was a great story with, Rat Queens broke my heart for that reason, but Monstrous is so beautiful. It is. Okay, on to your next one.
At least we were both in agreement that we kept Rat Queens off of because of the weird history of it.
Yep.
And that was a book, the first trade. I hand sold the shit out of at my store.
Yep. It is such a good story, and especially like when I think about a D&D group of all ladies who are just like doing drugs and having sex, and I'm like, my heart, these are my queens. And then that happened, and I have a really hard reconciliation with that story. So, okay.
This is probably not going to be a surprise at all. Maybe where I have it at. Low by Rick Remender and Greg Tocchini. I could have gone Deadly Class here. I do love that series, but Low to me is like the perfect sci-fi, fantasy, shitty characters, tragedy, depression book that I guess I need. Everybody's broken in this comic. It starts out with tragedy and how it affected this family. Like literally the book starts with meeting these characters as kids and going with their father to go hunting for food and his eye being fucking ripped out with a hook. And two of the girls get kidnapped. The son gets to stay with his mother, and he becomes a complete fucking asshole. The mother just has hope that she'll find her kids one day, and they will find an inhabitable place. So, little history of the book. Basically, the top side of Earth is uninhabitable. Radiation just annihilated everything, so all civilization moved underwater to these cities. And the cities are running out of air. So they need to start looking for places to go. And there's like a place that's kind of like Russian Siberia, and they ride cyborg polar bears. And they have their own kind of red scare there where they will kill people for having hope. Having hope is a crime. There's these mechs that certain families have. They're called helm suits, and they're keyed into the family's genetics, which is why at the beginning an eyeball is plucked out so that these pirates can use the helm. The helms can level a city by themselves. They're like way fucking OP. Tajo is my favorite character. She is a dumpster fire of emotions.
That very accurately like dumpster fire.
Yeah. The mother is a dumpster fire. They're all dumpster fires. Tajo is just the biggest dumpster fire. Of course, that's why I wanted to get her tattooed. Instead, I have her sister on my shoulder because Gambit bailed out on wanting to do what I wanted. Too many lines. I 100% recommend picking up at least the first trade. I think this might still be one of the $9.99 priced ones back when they were, but they might have ended that altogether, and it might be up to $14.99. I can't remember. Greg Tocchini's art is lush. The colorist tones to it, it almost looks like watercolor at certain parts. It is a beautifully drawn book. I mean, the covers are fucking dynamic. If they don't suck you in, I think it's like the cover for issue 3 or 4 where it has Stell in the underwater suit that has the wings on it. It's a beautiful, beautiful cover. And the story, I'd say this is like peak Remender. And by peak Remender, he was like, everybody's fucking broken. Some will have redeeming qualities. Again, it's a great marriage of artist and writer and them together. The series is hitting its last, I guess it'll be like what you call the last trade worth, I guess 5 or 6 issues, and the series will be over. Pick it up. I highly, highly recommend. This is like one of my go-to books. Like, it comes out automatically at the top on that pile. Unless Saga comes out, then Saga. I have certain books that always go to the top of the pile, so I make sure I read those fast or first, so that way I can talk about them, especially since I started doing reviews. Okay, I went way too long on that. So
that's okay.
Next.
Okay, what are it 4, right? 4.
Yes.
Okay. So number 4, I talk about this one a lot. It's one of my favorites. It's East of West. I think it started 2012, 2013. Jonathan, it came out around the same time that Saga did. And I really feel like the explanation for this and the covers do not do this story justice. The premise behind it is that when the Civil War happened, the South won, but not. But now it's like fast forward, and there's these like not weird, but like there's these cultures. So there's like this Western culture, and then there's Eastern culture, and there's the like horsemen of the apocalypse, and it's definitely that weird, wacky sci-fi fun adventure that I love. That's my brand, and that I love it. And then Nick Dragata, the artwork. It's this book to me, like I specifically remember finishing this and it felt like poetry to me. Like this is one of those just poetic comic books that I absolutely love.
I can't remember the girl's name, the Asian the mother of Absalom. She's so badass.
Yeah. And like all of the characters are just so wonderful in this. Like he does Jonathan Hickman does such a great job creating these characters. Once again, all of them flawed in some way. I feel like I'm getting distracted. Like I'm literally looking at this right now and I'm like, can I just read this right now? But anyways, it's a really good read. Highly recommend. Especially if you're the type of comic book reader that is now getting into Hickman because of X-Men. I remember reading East of West and I'm like, man, like Hickman has never been really on my radar for any type of reason. He is an underrated writer and now he's blowing up and you should read East of West.
Next is a book that haunted. This book haunted me. Kill or Be Killed. It was Brubaker, and I want to say Sean Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a horror book or
like a crime mystery
or psychological book. Like, there's a certain point in the book at the last issue where it shows you one thing, and then you find out it didn't happen. What really happened. I can't really talk about it without spoiling it, but you don't know if what's going on is he's crazy or if he's really being guided by this demon to go kill people.
Kill or Be Killed was one of those that remained. Like I enjoyed Kill or Be Killed for the first couple issues, and then like I think I still kept it on my pull list for a while, and then I stopped reading it, and it's over now, right? Like
it's very over. I think it was like 8 issues.
Okay, got it.
But the last issue after reading it haunted me. Like I kept thinking about it and going, okay, like did everything really happen or not? And then there's like a little throwaway epilogue with the on again, off again girlfriend, where it kind of leads you to believe that it might have really been happening.
Maybe I'll have to like go back and try to read now that it's all like collected in like paperbacks. I may have to like go and read that now.
He is also an unreliable narrator, the character, but I really enjoyed it. I really like Ed Brubaker's writing.
Yeah.
It was a tough choice between this and Fatale. Fatale was fantastic. I also really liked Velvet, where it's basically like Miss Moneypenny, like being a badass super spy. I don't know if this is like a must read for people, but this one was like one of the ones that like it stayed with me after reading it. And it usually, if a book stays with me, that means like I really enjoyed it. And on to your number 3.
Okay, so now we're at our top 3, and this one I mentioned is my favorite sci-fi book is Odyssey. Matt Fraction, Christian Ward. Once again, it seems like my theme on my top books will always be weird and wacky sci-fi. This one is in like acid trip through Homer's Odyssey, but if it was mostly women set in space. And I just absolutely love this book. It's very adult. There's lots of sex. You see a lot of TAPVD, all of that. It is for sure hard sci-fi with 2 Ds and a lot of TAV, all of that. And it's wonderful. I know I just kind of like gave the elevator pitch of it's Homer's Odyssey set in space, gender bent, on an acid trip. And it's so with an...
Touche.
Yeah. So please check this out if you like sci-fi at all, if you like wacky at all, and you're okay with very mature themes, a lot of sex and violence. It's beautiful. Please check out Odyssey. Please check out Odyssey. It's so good. So good. Okay, you're number 3.
It's going to be a surprise. Jupiter's Legacy.
Okay. Not necessarily a surprise, but I'm surprised that like other books didn't beat it out.
Jupiter's Legacy and Circle, like I really enjoyed it. It was between this and Magic Order because these are like the 2 Mark Miller books I think are probably my favorite. Yeah. But this one you throw Frank Quietly in there on art. And this goes in my trend of broken characters. Utopian's daughter is kind of a mess, and she's with a supervillain son. And then this group of kind of fame fuckers who want to basically, get rid of Utopian and kind of get their moment in the sun, with the brother who is pissed off and thinks he doesn't get his fair share. A lot of family dynamics.
Fucked up family dynamics in a superhero way.
Yeah, and then you throw in just the little bit of like downfall of superheroes and kind of the fame culture that they show in there a lot. Like there is kind of a little bit of a look at modern day, how people are, they're like, oh, I gotta take a picture on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. We're rich, we're famous. It had a little bit of everything for me. Where it really picked up for me is like the second half where the daughter gets clean, finds out she's pregnant. Mm-hmm. And then the next series jumps to years on, the kid is actually old enough to have powers now, and they're going to take down their uncle. I really enjoyed the series. It was almost a subdued Mark Miller. Like he didn't go like balls to the wall crazy with it, which you'd think with Frank Quietly that you do that. Like, which is weird not having him work with Grant Morrison. I try to imagine Grant Morrison like writing this series.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, like whenever I think about this series, I always think that Grant Morrison wrote it, but no.
I highly recommend it. It might not be for everyone. Your next one.
Okay. What do you? I'm very curious what you think my next pick is going to be.
Bitch Planet.
It's Bitch Planet. This one looks. Oh, sorry. Okay, so this series is a little, or this version looks a little bit different because I actually was gifted this several years ago. It's still in its like shrink wrap. It's local. It's Bitch Planet, but it's the local comic book shop day version hardcover, which is really beautiful. It was gifted to me, and I still haven't had the heart to open it up, but I still love it. Bitch Planet. Is very, very near and dear to my heart. I know that it's not going to be for everyone, and I don't necessarily. I have very big feelings about why it's not for everyone, but the premise of the book is that in a world where femininity is politicized, and if you are too fat, too loud, too outspoken, too anything that's not if you're a woman and you don't fall into those lines and you don't obey the patriarchy, you get sent to this off-site prison world dubbed Bitch Planet. And man, I think that will speak to very specific people, for anyone who doesn't fit into that gender binary, who doesn't fit into what the world says that you should be performing as. I find myself there, and some days you would think that this is part of real life right now with everything in the current political climate, but this book is so like tied to my emotions, and I think that if you didn't experience certain things in your life, you may not get some of the themes in this book, but if you go to Bitch Planet, you are deemed non-compliant, which I'm going to show off my non-compliant tattoo. Thank you, Dawn, for doing this beautiful tattoo for me several years ago. But man, there's characters in this that break my heart, and there's moments in it that break my heart. And Bitch Planet will always be like in my top 5 for almost everything. So, Kelly Sue DeConnick, I love you. This book speaks to my heart in so many ways. So,
I mean, we've had that conversation. Like, I'm comfortable with saying there's just books that aren't for me. I gave it a try. It's just not for me. Like,
I don't necessarily want to say that, like I said, if you've had certain experiences in your life where, like, as a woman who I feel non-compliant, like I don't necessarily feel like I fit into what society says that I should be doing as a woman, whatever. I won't go into that. And I'm not saying that this story is just for people who've experienced that, but I think that it will speak much louder to people who have. But I would argue that
the letter column to me in the back of the issues was actually more interesting than what was going on in the book for me.
And it's so cool, like, seeing all the, like, especially in the single issues, getting to see all of that. My argument for, like, if you are a dude who doesn't think that this book can speak to you, I would challenge that, because I not necessarily grew up, but like me as being into comic books, I'm still expected to get into the brain of a teenage spider boy or an adult millionaire, or, like, I'm still expected to, like, be able to read these books that are about a life that I've never lived. Like, I don't necessarily identify as a teenage spider boy, but yet as someone who's into comic books, I'm expected to, like, oh, you haven't read Spider-Man? Oh, you haven't read Green Lantern? Oh, you haven't read Flash? Like, I would say I still challenge myself as a reader to see those perspectives. And I would say I would challenge anyone who doesn't think that they can get into Bitch Planet because it doesn't speak to them because they're not a woman. Flip that script and challenge yourself to read Bitch Planet, because you will understand the world in a completely different way if you can understand Bitch Planet and how it speaks to people.
Well, at the letter column in the single issues, I got more out of that than I did, because there was actually some very, very fucking deep conversations that were going on in there with the letters. And like, they had, forget who the woman was. They had, a lot of the time she was a specialist in God damn it. I can't remember. It was someone who was always in the guest column though, like every month, and I don't remember like what exactly her field was, but there was a lot of conversations in there that actually like I got more out of than reading the book. But again, the art didn't call. I didn't like Valentine's art.
Delandro, yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't for me. Like I tried it, and actually for a while, like I read it more than I thought. But again, the letter column I got more out of than the actual book. But like it's not like dude bro thing with me. It's just
I think that for some people, not necessarily you, but I think for some people, the lack of the dude bro-ness challenges some people. But if you can get over that, like, man, this story will, if you're into comics and you find yourself, I don't know, I won't get into that.
But I mean, you'll read this book and then you go to Man Eaters and like you'll have weird experiences because that's a
Man Eaters. That one was also a challenging book because I really enjoyed Man Eaters, but then it got to a point and there's some issues with the creators.
That's what I was gonna say. Her on Twitter, she needs to just kind of like.
And like they're at surface level, it doesn't seem transphobic, but yes, I think the lack of diversity, even within books like Man Eaters, it is. And then Chelsea Kane, for whatever reason, wanted to hire someone.
Putting people's tweets in the book.
And basically the tweets that challenged her, instead of her taking the feedback and saying, okay, well, maybe I actually need to pay someone to help me on this book. And there's a lot of just transphobia in it. And I do recommend Man Eaters a little bit, but Jay, I 100%, I agree. I think that comics are for everybody. What's your number two? What's your number two?
This is gonna rock you a little bit.
Oh, now that you say that, I think I know what it's gonna be.
It's Saga.
I knew that you were gonna say, okay, so boo, because you knew that one was gonna be my number one. But okay, why is Saga number two for you?
So weirdly, like I put number one because if I explain this, I'm going to give away what my number one is.
Okay, just go ahead and do your number. What's your number one then?
Okay, so why I put Saga number two is because the book I had at number one had more of a cultural impact. And for me, this was the book that brought me back into Image, and that would be Walking Dead at number one. Okay. Which weirdly, Rob Liefeld was pushing on his forum because I went onto his forums because my friend was on there who used to work for him. So like we reconnected on that forum because I hadn't talked to him for years. And Rob was just pushing Kirkman's book. And I was like, all right, this dude won't shut the fuck up about it. So let me go ahead and check it out. 8 trades later, like within a week, I was hooked. And that brought me back into Image. So for me, the impact on it and like the weird thing of like I went to San Diego Comic-Con and they were having the Walking Dead panel for the show about to start. Literally 50 of us in a little room. And that was it for this show that eventually like blew up. It was it in Hawaii Five-0, the relaunch, in that room. And my friend the next year who like knew nothing about Walking Dead, he's like, holy shit, I didn't think this was going to blow up like it did. I was like, yep, apparently America was ready for zombies. It also brought us to John Bernthal as can't save them all, Rick. And then he became Punisher. Dude's angry 24/7. Just what, Rick? Come here, Rick. Saga, like I'm not taking anything. Easily could have flipped these 1 and 2. Like it's like 1 and 1A. Both had giant impacts. Where Walking Dead had a bigger impact for me, bringing me back to Image. And then all of a sudden going like, oh, wow, they've got writers now. Fuck.
It makes a lot of sense. And, I'm really surprised that Walking Dead didn't even like make it into the like honorable mentions. I think that I have a love-hate relationship with Walking Dead right now because I enjoyed the first season of the show, and then like it didn't really keep to the comic book, and then I feel like the quality of the show just dipped for a while, and then I just completely stopped reading, completely stopped watching, and then Walking Dead, I feel like became the basic bitch series. Is that like, I don't want to like offend anyone, but I feel like a
They
lot
kept to
of
a formula,
they
and
did.
you got rid of characters who never should have been gotten rid of that early, but we
Yeah.
kept around fucking. Nothing against him. Norman Reedus is okay, but like that character is just kind of one note.
If Daryl dies, we riot.
Yeah, like I was just like, fucking murder him. Do it. Do it.
And like I get it. Like
make it so.
I, 100%, I think that Walking Dead had a very big cultural impact. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, some series die a hero or live long enough to see themselves become the villain. And I feel like Walking Dead just got so saturated for me that I was kind of tired of hearing about it at one point. But it truly is a fantastic book. And I think that it easily is one of those comic books that for the people who like comic books but have only seen comic book movies and shows, Walking Dead is easily going to be the first comic book that I think a lot of people are going to read. So I think for that cultural impact, it is pretty big.
Also, one of the craziest things is Kirkman managed to end that series without anybody knowing the series was ending.
That was kind of beautiful. I was like working very part-time in a comic book store when this happened. And so it was like one Wednesday I walk in and it's like, oh, did you know that Walking Dead is ending? And I'm like, why is this not on my radar? And I think Kirkman had pulled another stunt with
they had they had solicits months still in previews for 2 months out. So like he kind of was just like, I was writing the same story, so it felt like it was a good time, and I commend him for having that knowledge of himself. Just be like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I'm hitting a wall, and I can respect the hell out of that. And it ended in a surprising way. So like, I'm good with it.
Yeah. So my number one, because spoiler alert, if you waited this long and you didn't know Saga was going to be my number one, like, do you even know me, people? I'm just kidding. Saga's my number one for so many reasons. It really, this came to me at a very challenging time in my life, that I was going through just a lot of shit with work and life and all that stuff. And man, this story just still challenges me, still breaks my heart. During this quarantine, I've read this probably 3 or 4 times easily, and there's like 2 or 3 moments where it just still breaks my heart. Wacky, weird sci-fi characters, characters like Prince Robot, which is a guy with a TV for a head. You've got
There's a deviant.
Man, and like Isabel and Marco, Alana, Hazel. Man, this one, it's so beautiful and it's so easily accessible. It's got the perfect amount of sci-fi and fantasy and just everything. Relatable characters that are still kind of like dumpster fires. And Saga is so good. Like, this always seems to be the book that I give to people as gifts if they like comic books but they don't know what to read. They've been reading comic books for a really long time and want something new and refreshing. And it just blows my mind that this series has been out for almost a decade and it still manages to like find people who have never read it before. So if you haven't read it, get on it. There's like 9 volumes now. It's on a hiatus. It's the perfect time to catch up. Please read it. If you want a copy, and I know you personally, I'll probably buy it for you as a gift. I love this so much. So,
and I didn't say this at the top. If you're wondering why we don't have any Wildstorm stuff on here, we decided not to do it because DC took Wildstorm, and they're publishing all Wildstorm now in their catalog, so it didn't seem fair to include that.
I really wanted to, when we were talking about like our top 10 Image list.
Yes.
Yes. When we were talking about our top 10 like Image list, I really wanted to make sure that we did that. Specifically, I picked series that had a little bit more than one volume, so at least like 2 or 3 volumes of work, and also was new. I didn't want to pick anything like, you know, too older, like Spawn or anything like that. But to me, like a lot of the Wildstorm titles were just a pinch like older, since that happened a little bit ago. So one that I was looking at on my shelf, and I'm surprised that I think that we've only mentioned it like once, Desolation Jones. Like,
I didn't love it.
Real man, I got such like Transmetropolitan vibes off that one. But we'll probably go ahead and just do like a Wildstorm episode anyways.
Yeah, because like Planetary easily would have been top 3 had I been able to use that. Mm-hmm. Also, Promethea was part of Wildstorm with the
really.
ABC. Oh, yeah,
it wasn't Vertigo.
No, it got absorbed. Promethea, the top 10. It was the ABC Comics with Wildstorm as an imprint, and it all went over there, which Alan Moore fucking lost his mind about because DC Comics got his property once again.
Yeah. Yep.
That whole thing was you do a whole episode about DC versus Alan Moore. That alone.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm here for it. I
don't have the energy.
Yeah.
All that has to happen is for DC not to for a year publish or reprint Watchmen, and he gets the property back.
Oh my goodness.
So they will never stop printing that book. Never, ever.
I think that I went, it's funny because I went to the grocery store the other day and watched it. Like, you know, they have magazines and they have books, and Watchmen is always on the shelf of the grocery store, which just blows my mind. Like,
really?
Yes. Yeah. And Fred Meyer. And when I was back in Florida, it was at Publix, like, or not Publix, a Walmart. Like,
I it's not Publix.
Yeah. No, not Publix. And like, you know, I'm sorry, Florida, Publix, I miss you a little bit.
They're subs.
My favorite. Chicken tender pub subs.
So I put this to the chat. Do you think we messed up our list? Is there something that you would have put in that maybe we didn't?
Or any like completely disagree, like you're just like, I read Saga and it's trash. You two are fucking idiots.
Surely my list. I put some oddball ones in there.
I really like, you know, after this episode, like, you know, goes to like video and like YouTube and everything, I really want to see like everyone else's top 10 list, or maybe even like a top 5 or top 3 if like, because like we mentioned, doing a top 10, it was like, okay, what are the darlings that we're going to kill? Like, what's our like fuck, marry, kill Image list?
Like leaving Descender off, like I still like, that's 2 lists I've had to leave it off, and I love the book. It just, I couldn't do it. And I'm sure when Sid watches this, she's going to fucking punch me whenever she sees me. Because that is her book. Or she's going to argue that I put the wrong Remender book on there.
Oh.
Because I think Deadly Class, like Marcus, she loves. It's her darling idiot kid. Mm-hmm. She calls him. And I could still like, there's like 5 other books I could probably sub in here at certain points for some of these books. But like, I was thinking a lot about Supreme the Blue Rose, and maybe because we talked about it not too long ago.
Yeah.
And I bit with some that only have, 1 trade out, and that only had 1 trade.
Yeah. There's Image, the reason why like I gravitate towards it, one, the creators, the artists, the writers, the colorists, the letterers, all of that. I think that the stories that they come out with, they're able to do it because they're not majorly published. They're not these like licensed characters that have to have a specific thing going on, and creators can actually be creators with Image. So I love those stories so much, and that's why I just almost any time like the new like previews comes out, I go straight to the Image section.
More and more I notice that like younger creators, they do the I'm going to use Marvel or DC to get my name out there, and then it's immediately I'm going over here. Like Hickman, he did Fantastic Four, and then he did that ungodly long Avengers run. Like that led into Secret Wars that he said he was like burned out from doing all these crossovers.
Yeah.
And then of course he comes over, and then I don't know if he was doing East to West concurrent or
at the same time as what?
As Fantastic Four and Avengers. I don't know if he was writing on both of them at the same time.
I can't recall.
He did have a really good Fantastic Four. Maybe that's what we'll do next Wednesday. We'll do Hickman. We'll get this shit done with.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sounding like negative about it, but no, like we've talked about it.
I enjoy Hickman but I'm more familiar with his indie stuff than necessarily other than like the House of X, Powers of X, X-Men stuff. But yeah,
we can hit it all. I mean, it's easily. I mean, I read more of the Marvel stuff where he had to destroy the universe because that's what he does.
But I enjoyed that like thoroughly.
So I think that's all I've got on Image Books. I'm even looking at my list now going, man, I could have changed some stuff. But I like, after the 17th change, I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to obsess over this any longer. Because Gambit got me started when we were hanging out yesterday. He goes, so how many of them are nostalgia picks for you? I was going to fuck around and say Youngblood was my number one. Just
No. We all know that one would have been a lie. But I think the thing about these is that it's really hard to rate these ones. He was writing East of West. Okay, but after okay. I think the thing about like all of these Image titles is that it's really hard to rank them because they all have things that are very special. Like Bitch Planet's going to be really special to me for reasons that are completely different than what's special for you. Saga and Walking Dead and all of that. So I think that when you really try to like rate these, I don't know. My rating system is like, whose line is it anyways? Like the points don't matter. It's just all about like how I feel at the moment. So
a lot of them is how they resonate with me after the fact.
Yeah.
Well, Nailbiter resonates with me for good reasons and bad reasons currently, but I still doesn't take away from the book. I would have loved to put Injection on here by Warren Ellis, but just kind of abandoned it.
Yeah, and because it's what, 3 volumes?
I think so, yeah.
So to me, like it was a little bit inconsistent publishing, and then it's not enough. Like I need more Injection.
Rocket Girl was one I thought about putting on there, but it just didn't go with me long enough to really resonate. Fun read, but
for sure.
Sam Keith the Max almost made it.
Okay, that's definitely one of those like nostalgia picks.
Yeah, I thought about it for a while. I was like, but did I love it, or do I just remember the MTV cartoon on Liquid Television?
Yeah. Yep.
Spawn the cartoon was great, but again, like it's an okay book. It's just it never became a thinker.
Yeah.
And then like I have nostalgia for artists like Michael Turner will always, he's deceased, but I always tie him to Witchblade. But I like the art more than
Michael Turner's one of those like, I don't know, Rob Liefeld-esque artist for me. Like I just always think about the distorted human beings that he made and how uncomfortable that, I don't know. So I just have a weird nostalgia with Michael Turner.
See, I just thought of him as a Silvestri clone.
Okay. I mean, that I see that. Would love to see a Vaporware countdown. Comics that just disappeared that you need to come back. Whew. That would be a loaded episode. I feel like
I'd be triggered. There's some books that like disappeared that like just never finished and pissed me off.
That could easily be like a segment.
I could give you I'll give you my fucking number one right now. Joe Madeira, Battle Chasers. You fucked people on that to fund that fucking game he was doing, he said he was going to finish Battle Chasers and draw it, and then he goes, "Oh, I'm too busy to do it. I'm just going to get a guy who draws like me to do it." I'm just like, you motherfucker. Like, you fuck people on a Kickstarter. I mean, not that that's something new, but yeah, would it be 20 years you haven't touched that book? You put out a couple of games because, you know, you actually enjoyed playing games more than you actually like drawing a book that made you famous. And of course, you know, you had the balls to put out an omnibus that had 9 issues. You couldn't even get a 10th issue out, buddy. And then J. Scott Campbell, whew, Danger Girl. I did 6. I'm done. Oh God. Oh.
That's a little bit of a harder list. I would probably, like, part of me is like, I'm like looking back at my shelf, like, what are the ones that I feel like need more?
Warren Ellis was writing a whole redo of the Marvel's New Universe. It just disappeared. They stopped putting it out, and he left.
And like, we'll never see that.
No. Although I did like his redo of the Authority and everything for it was that series called the Wildstorm for DC that I really actually enjoyed. And wow, Jay, you got me kind of upset thinking about Battle Chasers. I was trying to stay off that subject.
Like, take a drink.
No, not take a drink kind. That's actually shit. You know, we didn't do it for saying Rob Liefeld's name.
Oh, you know what? But I have just an energy drink. I'm not drinking.
You're not chugging it?
I am like kind of chugging my energy drink slowly, but it's not alcohol.
Well, no, I don't have alcohol either, so I got to go to work tonight, and I have to drive the forklift, so I don't really want to go in inebriated going, "Hey guys, who wants some mulch?" Ghost riding it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You said Ghost Rider, and I had to talk about this. Nick Cage as Tiger King. Come on.
I couldn't think of anything more perfect.
Man, that was beautiful news to wake up to. Like, because I had seen some like other rumors swirling around about like celebrity dream casts like trying to throw their hat in for the race, and then I saw Nicolas Cage, and man, I had a Nick Cage in the bathroom Mandy moment, just so excited. I want to see this so bad.
Where's that bitch Carol Baskin?
I can see it, like, it's already there. So
Who do you get to play Carol Baskin?
I've seen what's her name from Saturday Night Live put her hat in for it. Oh man, I can't even think of her name. Kate McKinnon as Carol Baskin. Obviously, you know, Kate McKinnon is very tiny, but
Bro, I forgot about that book, Mind the Gap. You're fucking right.
Mind the Gap.
That shit disappeared. That and 5 Weapons fucking disappeared and never came back. Sorry.
No.
Mind the Gap. Yeah, you're absolutely 100% right. That shit just disappeared and did not come back.
I'm telling you, we're going to have to do a whole episode on these.
It's going to become a What Grinds My Gears from the Family Guy.
Oh my God. What grinds my gears?
I mean, I just picture like Nick Cage from The Wicker Man punching Kathy Bates in the face, which she's wearing that bear suit.
I could almost see Kathy Bates as Carol Baskins, but I feel like Carol Baskins is like a pinch younger. You know what? Melissa McCarthy as Carol Baskins.
That would be good. That actually would be pretty damn good.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. She can do it, I think.
I forget what you Gambit and I were talking about when I was dreamcasting Kathy Bates. I forget what book we were talking.
Were we talking about Big Barda? Not Big Barda. We were talking about.
Oh yeah, Granny Goodness.
Yeah, Granny Goodness. Like, serious. I mean, I think Kathy Bates obviously like has that like murderous. She could 100% be Granny Goodness. I would love to see that. I want to see. I love Big Barda. I just want Big Barda to have her own shit and not just Female Furies. Like,
Female Fury series was such fucking garbage. Oh God.
I still picked it up because I love Big Barda, but I don't know.
Wait, what? Helen Hunt's still alive? I haven't seen her in a while, but I feel like we would have known. There would have been like a Mad About You, like nonstop playing of it.
Yeah, right.
Oh God, like, is it going to be a movie with Nick Cage, or is that a TV series that they're doing with him as Joe Exotic?
I'm not sure. I hope that they do. I really hope that they keep it to a movie, because then I feel like it could be more dramatic that way.
Oh, Nick Cage is going to overact the shit out of that. How much are you going to pay me?
Yeah, 100%. Like, take my money.
This might be the way he dies. What if they have him with a real fucking tiger and he gets mauled?
Oh my God.
It's that bitch Carol Baskin's fault.
No.
Not the tiger. Not the tiger. I'm sorry. The only thing worse would be Jason Statham wearing the mullet wig.
No.
Oh, it would be so hilariously bad, though. It's that bitch Carol Baskin.
No, don't take Nick Cage, Tiger King, away from me.
Well, if that happened, then Nick Cage can redo all the Crank movies, since it was originally written for him. Do shot for shot a remake of it, but with Nick Cage as Chev Chelios.
I'm almost here for that. I would almost trade that.
I was listening to that How Did This Get Made podcast with the guy, one of the writers of it. He was like, oh yeah, it was Nick Cage, but we couldn't afford him. I was like, wait, this was during a point where Nick Cage wasn't really in demand and you couldn't afford him, but you could get Jason Statham, who was in Snatch.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe because he wasn't a main player in them. He wasn't like the main star.
Maybe it's because he was kind of like in one of those like ebbs in his career, like he'd hit his peak. So he's still demanding this money, but he was down here and just didn't want to admit it to himself.
I'm trying to think when that came out with Con Air and all that. No, Con Air and all that came out way before that.
Yeah.
This feels like Port of Call, New Orleans, Bad Lieutenant 2 point in time, which fucking movie's great. He deserved an Oscar for that. He is like fucking like the Nick Cage scale, where it's normally like a 20. He's doing a 25 in it. Like he's so fucking over the top as like a opioid addicted cop after Katrina. Oh yeah, he's fucking amazing. And at a certain point, like he starts like imagining things when he's like going through like withdrawal, like peak Cage. Not like Drive Angry 3D peak Cage. Well, that's a movie I could talk an hour about how bad that was. I never have sex before a gunfight.
Oh my God.
Oh God. And Amber Heard's in it. I'm like, why? What is going on here? Like this whole movie, like. Okay, I'm just dragging us on talking about Nick Cage now. So that is going to be it for us. I have to get ready for work.
I hope everyone enjoyed our picks. If you wildly disagree, you can send me hate mail, I guess.
You don't want that.
I don't. I really don't. I'll send you hate mail back, or I'll send you love mail. I'll send you very nicely written letters back.
We will be doing Monstrous. Still working on a date, and working on getting one or two guests who have weird hours. So going to work on that. And also Jennifer started her own YouTube channel.
Yay! So come find me on them internets. And so for anyone who's wondering, I used to go by Gin and Comics on Instagram. I now go by Comic Books Will Break Your Heart on Instagram. And then my YouTube stuff is Comics Will Break Your Heart. So Comic Books Will Break Your Heart on Instagram. Comics Will Break Your Heart on YouTube. Send me carrier pigeons and smoke signals.
And yes, she is still going to be doing the shows with us.
Yes,
with me and Gambit. And she just wanted to have a channel to do her own personal stuff. Yeah. And very proud that you did this because for all things, it's kind of nerve-wracking doing this. It really is.
Oh my God. And it's so funny because I was telling my partner, I'm like, I feel like doing these live streams like have gotten me into the groove of like what I want to do, have helped me like choose how I want to do things. So like thank you from the bottom of my heart, from like, you know, the simple like internet, like I don't know, Instagram, like, hey, your stuff is cool, and like all of that, to inviting me on. Like, I appreciate that so much from the bottom of, I don't know where the fuck this is, but wherever the heart is, it's there.
Well, you doing this with me helped me through my mountainous, cavernous depression that I was going through. And plus, honestly, the channel got better. I mean, everything got better.
Aw.
Well, even like, I think viewer wise, it got better because it's weird adding a female to the.
Well, who would have known that there's this whole untapped audience?
Yeah, it's just not me and Gambit going, you know what's cool? This is cool. No, it was never like that. We did the deep in-depth stuff, but I had no one to talk Dune with. We will be doing the Dune over. It's happening. I don't know if we're going to wait till the trailer may or may not come out next week because Brian Herbert's kind of saying something big's happening next week, early in the week. Just playing my fucking emotions at this point, but okay.
I bet it's probably just going to be a teaser. Like, it's not going to be any type of like theatrical trailer. I bet it's just going to be like a 10-second clip where we just see like maybe like the litany of fear start to be talked about, and then we see like a desert, and then just Dune pops up. It's going to be like 10-15 seconds.
For my own sanity, just don't put as much Duke Leto in it, please. Like,
I don't think so. I think it's going to be Timothée Chalamet.
Because like I'm not going to be able to deal with whatever is going to come out of Sid's mouth or typing like, oh my God, I always thirst trap for Leto before, but this is too much. That beard, the smolder. I was just like, okay, like it's 4 a.m. Like I'm good. I'm at work still. I'm excited for it. I am down for it. And so the Dune over, are we going to do a reread of the book? Or...
I would say, because that was like the first like show that we did together.
Yeah.
And that you had me on for the show. And I think that we originally just talking about the sci-fi
movie
series.
Yeah.
So I would say I want to get more into the book, and I wouldn't mind getting into like maybe the first trilogy, like the first 3 books.
Because I'm probably going to erase that other video. So I don't have to see that. Oh, no,
for nostalgic reasons.
I just don't want to see that other person on it.
I know, but for nostalgic reasons.
Okay. We'll talk about that as we get closer, because book 1's pretty thick, and
yeah.
I mean, I could probably just get the audiobook and listen to it while I'm at work.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of lose something of the audiobook.
You do.
So thank you everybody for watching. And also check out, besides Jennifer's channel, Sydney Reads, where she just did her
May Reads.
Yeah, TBR. Her book pile. Also Sanimation 05, who's become a friend of the show. She is putting videos out a lot. Give her a watch. She is very much, it's not about showing off what she's buying, it's what she's reading. She is a reader of the books and just lover of the medium. And it comes through in her videos. It's all very heartfelt. So with that being said, you can find me at comic_chop_news on Instagram, or Chop Comic on Twitter, which nobody ever subscribes to or follows me on there, and it's just a desolate wasteland.
It is.
You can also find me Blocked by Tom King on Twitter. I'm just going to put that in my profile bio. Blocked by Tom King. Jennifer, besides that, comic books will break your heart.
I would say just find me on Instagram and there as of right now.
Alrighty. So with that being said, join us next week as I guess we're going to talk about Jonathan Hickman, and then soon we may have comics, maybe new comics.
Maybe we'll see.
I don't know what the format will be at that point because we're just like
Yeah.
we've been talking about everything and nothing for the last month and a half.
It'll be nice to have like a pinch of structure, maybe. Who knows? Who knows?
I feel like this was structured. The last
Yeah.
2 episodes. That's why it's so weird. Okay, so next week join us, and I believe Monstrous will probably be coming up soon after that. We'll see if I get those other 2 people, but it'll definitely be Gambit, myself, and Jennifer on there. Don't get too freaked out by Gambit's non-beard. The quarantine's taken a lot from everyone, mostly him. He lost his beard.
You can donate. You can donate to his beard fund by going to gambitsinc.com and getting a commission, and maybe it goes towards the beard fund. Who knows?
It's gonna go somewhere. Keeping him busy will actually be the best fund. So with that being said, take care and join us next week. And again, let us know what your top 10 would have been, or what maybe you thought we should have put in instead of another title. I'm sure mine will be the one most picked on. But it's what I'm feeling. It's where my heart is right now. I'm Matthew McConaughey from Wolf of Wall Street. All right, guys, take care and goodbye.
Bye.